In my years on the bench, I've seen thousands of cases. People come into this courtroom with all kinds of stories, some simple, some tragic, some funny. But every once in a while, a story comes along that reminds us of something bigger than the law, something bigger than the courtroom itself. That day, an elderly gentleman walked in. His name was Nicholas Manzo. He was 93 years old. At first glance, you'd see a man who looked gentle, polite, and dignified. He was here for what seemed like a small thing, a traffic violation. Now, most people who come in for a violation try to explain it away. They argue. They say, "Judge, I didn't see the sign," or "It wasn't my fault." But Nicholas didn't do that. When I asked him about the charge, he said with complete honesty, "Judge, there's no question. I was wrong." Think about that. 93 years old. 72 years of driving without a single violation. And here he was standing tall, accepting responsibility. That alone set him apart. But then, the story took a turn none of us expected. I asked him about his age, and he looked at me and said, "Judge, I'm a World War II veteran." The courtroom fell silent. You could feel the respect, the admiration, sweep across the room. Nicholas began to tell his story. He said that when he was just 16 years old, he was so eager to serve his country that he altered his birth certificate. Imagine that, a boy of 16, not trying to sneak into a movie theater, not trying to buy something he wasn't old enough for, but trying to get into the Navy. He chuckled a little as he told me a policeman caught him and sent him home. But he didn't give up. The very next year, on his 17th birthday, he went down and enlisted properly. That was Nicholas. Determined. Committed. Ready to serve. He went on to serve 29 months in the Pacific. He said it as if it were nothing, but those of us listening knew exactly what that meant. 29 months of battle. 29 months of fear and courage. 29 months of fighting for freedom in some of the harshest conditions in history. He told me he fought in every major battle in the Pacific. Every single one. When he said that, the room grew even quieter. We were not just listening to a man recounting old memories. We were listening to history itself, to someone who had lived through the very events we read about in textbooks. Nicholas spoke of his father, too, a man who had served in World War I. Service wasn't just something he did. It was in his blood. His family had given to this country not once, but twice across 2 world wars. And here he was, after all of that, standing in my courtroom for a simple traffic ticket. The contrast was striking. A man who had once faced death on distant shores, now answering for a mistake at a traffic light. It made me pause. It made everyone pause. I thought to myself, what is justice here? Is it collecting a fine from a man who has already given so much? Or is it recognizing that behind this minor violation stands a life of sacrifice, of honor, of service? In my courtroom, we receive donations from people all across the country. They send checks, some large, some small. Many come from veterans themselves. They tell me, "Judge, please use this to help someone who needs it." That day, I had a check from one veteran, a man who wanted to extend kindness to another. And I looked at Nicholas and said, "Your fine is going to be paid by a fellow veteran." Because sometimes justice is not about punishment. Sometimes justice is about gratitude. I dismissed his case. And then I told him something that came from deep in my heart. I said, "Men like you and families like yours deserve a monument. Because you are the reason we enjoy the freedoms we do today." The courtroom broke into applause. Not polite applause. Not casual applause. But heartfelt, genuine applause. People knew they were in the presence of a man whose life represented something bigger than himself. Nicholas smiled. His eyes watered just a bit. In that moment, he wasn't a 93-year-old man with a ticket. He was a reminder of what it means to serve, to sacrifice, to live with integrity. As he walked out, I thought about all the lessons his story carried. Here was a man who had lived nearly a century. He had fought in wars, he had served his country, he had raised a family. And yet, he still stood in court with humility, admitting his mistake. That humility, that honesty, is what made him truly great. Nicholas reminded us that being a hero isn't about never making mistakes. It's about owning up to them. It's about living your life with honor, day in and day out, in the small things as well as the big things. He also reminded us that justice must always see the person behind the case. Laws are important. Rules are important. But at the heart of justice is compassion. And sometimes compassion means looking beyond the act to the life that was lived before it. That day, I didn't just dismiss a ticket. I honored a life. I honored a family. And I reminded myself and everyone in that courtroom that our freedoms, our safety, our very way of life were bought by men like Nicholas. As a judge, I'm tasked with applying the law. But as a human being, I am called to show mercy where it is deserved. Nicholas deserved mercy. He deserved respect. And above all, he deserved gratitude. So when people ask me what justice means, I often think back to that day. Justice is not only about enforcing rules. Justice is about seeing people. Justice is about compassion. Justice is about recognizing sacrifice. Nicholas walked out of my courtroom that day not as a violator of the law, but as a hero of life. And I believe every single person who heard his story walked out better for it. That is what justice can do. That is what compassion can do. And that is why I will always remember the day that 93-year-old Nicholas Manzo came into my courtroom and reminded us all what it truly means to live a life of honor.